G'day everyone, Gordys Gasbags back again, and we're up to episode 9, moving along very nicely. Corona still proudly sponsoring this terrific show, and thank you so much everyone for all of your support. I'm really appreciating that you're sharing this and everyone's really enjoying it. The messages have been great. Many of you have asked for this person, and no doubt I couldn't wait to get this lady on the show. Kathryn Harby-Williams, the Harbster. How you going?
Hello, Gordy. I'm very well. I want to know how much Corona are paying you for this series.
Well, I wish
clearly not enough to buy a better hat.
Well, thanks, mate. I wish Corona were. I got frightened the other day because someone sent me a message saying that the Corona distillery in Mexico had been shut down. So yes, I got frightened.
And you know what I remember about you is that you drink Corona without the lemon in it. Is that right? Have I got a good memory?
Let's just check. Yes, correct. No lemon, my friend. You are spot on.
I remember being told off quite abruptly by you one night for putting lemon in it. How dare I?
Well, to be honest with you, Kath, it's sacrilegious. So cheers to that. Have you got a drink there?
Yes, I do.
Lovely.
Cheers. Nice
Cheers.
to see you.
Now, listen, we were chatting off screen and we'll talk about it on screen now. A beautiful backdrop there. It looks like you're in a beach area.
Yes, and not by choice. I know the government has said stay home, don't go to holiday destinations unless you have to, but we are in between homes. So we had to find somewhere to live, and fortunately some kind people have allowed us to use their apartment, and we come here regularly over Christmas time. So we were wandering the streets of Sorrento during this crazy time of ours, and there are much worse places to be. Oh,
I was just going to say to you, what a absolutely beautiful part of the world. You're a South Australian born, but you can't, if I were to draw dots on a map, I wouldn't say you've been everywhere, but you've been around, haven't you? Of course, SA, and then over to Kiwi land, back into Melbourne now where you're based, and obviously down in Sorrento.
Yeah, who would have thought I'd be a Victorian, Sue? But yes, had lived in some terrific destinations and have a number of terrific friends back home, also in New Zealand, but now here in Victoria, and we're very happy here. We've been here about 7 years. Kids are very settled, so it looks like we're here to stay.
Harbs, were you always going to play netball? Were you the kid at school that was always going to play netball? I got a feeling, I don't know, I don't reckon you were.
I was the child that played every sport, and people often ask me, does I love football? And if I was, young in this day and age, which path I would have pursued? And I don't know the answer to that. Like, I love netball. You start off with a lot of sports and it all comes to a head, and netball was the one that I've been best at. But if football was an option, I think there would have been a bit of tug of war going on in my mind as to which avenue I would pursue. But look, I was very lucky to have a wonderful career, a lot of success, made a lot of great friends, did a lot of travelling. So I certainly wouldn't complain about the path that I was able to follow.
You were born a defender. Like, let's be blatantly honest. I mean, we characterise the positions on the court, and we know that the princesses are at one end of the court and the Bulldogs are at the other. You epitomise the Bulldog, champ.
Well, no, maybe you refer to us as a Bulldog because you're a mid-quarter, but we defenders like to think of ourselves as the smart end of the court. We have to read the play, and a lot of captains have been defenders too. So, yeah, I don't consider myself a Bulldog, but rather one of the more intelligent netballers that played the game. Well, I convince myself anyway. I kind of look at South Australia's had such an intriguing netball history, I think, throughout the years. But and at the moment, I look currently through, in particular, the 17s and 19s, and it's having a really nice little period. But I go back to the era that you played, alongside some of the most unbelievable names, but in particular, you paired up with Sarah Sutter. You had Jackie Delaney in there at the time, Peter Squire, Peter Schultz. I mean, there was some decent crew out of South Australia. Yeah, Yeah, and then we had, at the States when we played nationals, we had Michelle Dendecker and Jenny Borlase. So we were really lucky. We played in a terrific era. South Australia is quite a small state, but sport is a very important part of the culture there. And Adelaide being the size that it was, we had a terrific time. We were successful. We almost had the key to the city, really. So it was pretty good when you had to get into a nightclub and didn't have to line up, which was the most important thing for a 20-something-year-old. But look, it had a lot of success and a lot of fun. And then you look at the relationships. Like you and I are friends now in Victoria, and Simone and Shelley are here. So, that's the great thing about netball. We had a great deal of success at home, but, the friendships that you make nationwide and worldwide are ones that are, really tight. And whenever you see each other, it's like picking up where you left off last time you came across each other's paths.
Yeah, and, it's so true. And funnily enough, holding us in unbelievable stead through this current environment, isn't it? Because, even just doing these Gordys Gasbags, for me, it's just, I know what it's doing for me, catching up with everyone, and I know it's certainly sending that love out and about. But you're right, netball's been extraordinary for us as our journey has gone along the way. For you, though, I want to go back. When I keep catching up with everyone, I've been talking about the characteristic that stands out for a particular player during their time. For you, Kath, it was simply at goal defence, get yourself just across the transverse line, and then on one leg, look at the goal shooter and bomb that bloody ball for the biggest lob this side of Texas.
Yeah, the shortest path to goal, I always thought was a pretty good way to go rather than fuss around, and the chance of error was much greater. And that's when the likes of, Jenny Borlase came into play, and Vicky Wilson when I played for Australia. I had some fair targets down there. So, that was a bit of fun. I really enjoyed the attacking side of being a defender. And that's why I think I love goal defence, because you got to do that defensive play. You could be a bit looser than, say, a wing defence like Simone McInnes, but then you also had that attacking element. So, I started off as a shooter, thought I was terrific, but sort of lost my confidence, and then was put into the mid-court. And then the coach moved me from centre to goal defence, so I poked my tongue out at her, thinking that was the worst move that she'd ever made, and there was no looking back after that. I loved it.
Margie Angove, a big influence on your career?
Yeah, massive. We caught up with her recently. One of our teammates, Vicky Neal, turned 50, so we all flew into Adelaide, and she was there, and she was like a second mum to us. And it was very different back in the day, because all of the players who played for the Thunderbirds lived locally, so we were very much like sisters. Players didn't come from all around the world and from other states. We were playing with the same people week after week, year after year, and Marg was the mainstay. So we spent a lot of time at her home. There was a lot of trust between her and us and the other way, and a lot of respect. But she also allowed us, and I think one of the reasons that we were successful, she allowed us to be who we were. We didn't toe the line all the time. There was a lot of flair amongst our group, and she allowed that, but reined it in when she needed to. So we had a wonderful, wonderful time coming through the ranks. With Contact first and then the Thunderbirds after that. So, we still catch up as a group, and certainly Marg is a big part of that.
Yeah, she prided herself on the defensive element of her game, which obviously was pretty solid through SA. Can you tell us what was something that stood out from a coaching tip or that came from Margie that really sat with you as a defender?
She let you be. She knew that to be successful, you couldn't rein in the flair. There are a lot of players in our team that had flair. You think of Jackie Delaney and Peter Scholes, and she allowed that to occur naturally. And the same with me. I probably wasn't a standard type one-on-one type defender. One of my strengths, I think, was reading the play and coming through and taking some intercepts off my player. And she allowed me to do that. I think if I had a coach that was more about, that tight defensive unit and one-on-one, I possibly wouldn't have been, lucky enough to be as successful as I was. But at the same time, whilst I worked under her for, 15 years or so, she never lost my attention. She always, was keen to make things different. We had a wonderful relationship, and she didn't mind telling me what was what when things weren't going well or when I wasn't playing well. And you always dreaded the phone call from her saying, Kathryn, can we meet at the coffee shop? Because she did it to all of us. And when you were having a bad run, when you got that call saying you have to go and have coffee with the coach, and you know you're out of form, but she just had to reinforce it and actually ask us, you know, what are we going to do about this? Because things aren't going so well.
God, I mean, I've a big heart for Margie. I'm hoping that we're going to actually get a chance to catch up with her on Gordys Gasbags, hopefully sometime in the next couple of weeks. You're a natural captain. You're a leader. You're a natural captain. For me, ever since I've known you, you call a spade a spade. That, I think it's one of your greatest strengths.
And a weakness too.
well, I was going to say that. Did it come across as a weakness to some?
It might have come across to those that didn't know me as arrogant or aloof, but you know, I was never into games. I was never into politics, and like you said, you know, I just spoke my thoughts in my mind, but was respectful of what people said to me. But as a captain, I think it was always team first, you know, and that was certainly Marg's philosophy, and that's why we worked well together, because it didn't matter how big you were, if you played for Australia, if you didn't adhere to the team philosophy and didn't put the team first, then there was no place for you in our side. And I think that was the reason why we were successful, because that was passed, you know, across the number of players that came through our system. So I was always honest, and yeah, it's got me into trouble at times, but you know, I would rather be honest and upfront than, you know, be scurrilous and you know, be that type of person. That was certainly not me.
Michelle Dendecker, Lizzie Ellis, Laura Geitz, yourself, all captained Australia and all defenders.
Yeah, see, I say no more.
Now, I'm
not the bulldog, the intellects of the team.
I'm not going to open this up for a moment to praise defenders, but I'm wondering.
Let's be honest. If you were taller and you had some brains, you would have been a circle defender rather than a mid-quarter.
I actually started defence, but I was too bloody small.
Yes, exactly.
Hey,
and not smart enough.
Yeah, oh, well, you know, I mean, that's why I do this shit. But anyhow, so tell me, what do you think that is? I mean, all four of you, extraordinary leaders. Why is it that, you know, it seems to be that a high percentage of our captains that have led this country have been defenders?
I don't know. I think it's just a coincidence. I can't say that, you know, the type of person you are dictates what position you play. So I don't know. I think it's just a coincidence. But, you know, all great netballers, all great people, all great leaders. They just happen to be smart defenders. I don't know. Can't answer it.
Hey, you captained Australia, I just mentioned, for about 4 years. I think it was about 2000 to 2003, roughly. Tell me a little bit about that time as captain, I guess, and that group of players that you played through that era, because it was quite special. Yeah.
Look, my time at the Australian level was amazing. So, you know, even prior to becoming captain, to play with the likes of Vicky Wilson, I saw that you had Shelley O'Donnell on and Simone McInnes, Carissa Doward, you know, you go on and on. But, you know, people who you'd want to be in the trenches with, and, that team built a really strong culture, which, you know, the Australian team, it builds from one generation to the next. But the common theme is that you expect to win. Or in those days, and I don't think it's any different now, but you expected to win. So if you lost one game, it was a real strong analysis and some deep-seated conversations that would occur in the change room to make sure that it didn't happen twice in a row. And, you know, I can't remember ever losing two in a row. So then when I was named captain, and, you know, I'll never forget that announcement, and then fronting the media, and, you know, I'd been around for a while by then, so we're reasonably comfortable with the media, but I was so nervous, and it was a real indicator to me just what it meant to be chosen as the captain of your country. You know, it really hit home that not many people get to do this, and I've been chosen to do it. So it was a real honour, and that wasn't lost on me. And, you know, we just had quite a few South Australians, as you said, in that team, and it was just a real strong bond, and the expectation was to win. And, you know, I've played in some amazing games, but, you know, I think the pinnacle for me was being captain in Manchester at the Com Games, where we went into double extra overtime. and we didn't really know the rules, and we had to win by 2 because it didn't happen very often. I mean, we won, and I remember standing on the dais and almost passed out. I was that exhausted, but a real sense of, wow, this, it doesn't get any better than this.
Yeah, I remember watching that footage at the time, and not even the commentators. Well, Annie Sargent did, but there was the lead commentator was unsure of the rules as well. And I just remember at one point looking at Nick Richardson as she hit the pocket, and the look on her face, she quickly glances over at the bench and she's looking for something, playing centre of all positions, and she's getting absolutely nothing, the poor bugger.
Well, it's funny because we didn't know the rules, and, we went from the extra time and it rolled straight into the 2-goal advantage. And I, too, was looking at the sideline. You could see people putting up their 2 fingers. So eventually it clicked. But I remember Jill McIntosh being interviewed a while down the track, and they said, what did you say to the girls when the final break occurred? She said, well, sort of explain that if we went into double extra overtime, this is what happened. But that was crap.
Yeah.
She didn't say that. We didn't know.
I mean, and Jill prided herself. And Jill prided herself on the what if moments,
Yes.
She forgot that one.
Yeah, it was, I don't know, but we were well coached and well drilled, and it all worked out in the end. But I remember I've never felt in a game where I thought we were gone, and there was a moment, I think it was in normal time, where I thought, we're not going to do it here. And then I think that we were quite relieved to get to that draw. And then I knew thereafter that, we were in for a really good shot.
Yeah, and I, again, that footage, Kathryn Cox just bombing those long balls. And then bloody Sherelle comes and steals the show again.
Yes, of course. Yeah, so that was probably my other highlight when she shot that goal in 99. That was pretty amazing. But, yeah, she doesn't mind the limelight, Sherelle. We do all the hard work to get her to that point, and she just happens to shoot the final goal.
Oh, God, love. I just spoke about commentary, and that kind of leads me to you moved across to New Zealand. Was that because of hubby?
No. It came actually, Mark Foster generated the conversation and the thought process in our family. So, I was at the World Cup in Jamaica and got a call from Mark Foster saying, what are you doing, when you retire? And I hadn't thought that far. So she said, look, we'd be interested in seeing if you'd like to play over here in New Zealand. So then I went over there and got a number of calls from other clubs and landed with the Diamonds in Auckland, and had a fabulous time. It was a really nice way to wind down my career because the season wasn't as long, the pace wasn't as fast, and I made some terrific friends. My teammate was Anna Stanley, who was the opposing captain at the World Champs in Jamaica, and we got on really well and still really good friends to this day. But it was a really nice way to remind you why you played netball in the first place, because I don't think you realise when you're playing at the highest level that there is an element of pressure. It just comes with the territory, and you deal with it whilst you're in the moment. But when you step out of it, and I was winding down, you realise that it was a different environment. There was some pressure there whilst playing for the Thunderbirds in Australia, whereas, I was playing for the Diamonds, and it was just back to being 16 again, having lots of fun and no pressure, and a really good way to finish off my career. So went for 3 months through for one season, played 2 seasons and stayed 9 years and had 3 Kiwis. So It's a really lovely, lovely time of our lives in New Zealand. We've got lots of great friends there. But then decided to come home because we'd had enough of rugby, and our children were starting to talk like Kiwis, so we had to make the move before they got entrenched over there.
Right. So reality kicked in for you.
It did, yes. We didn't want our children to be Kiwis. Come on.
Well, but I wanted to chat because while you were over there, you also stepped into the realms of commentary, and I kind of feel like we've got there's a little family of us and that includes Anna Stanley over in New Zealand, who I think is a tremendous commentator alongside Jenny Woods. Yep. And I think Annie Sargent paved the way for so long and is still involved with us in that world of commentary. But, as a kid growing up, I don't think any of us ever had those sorts of dreams because it didn't exist.
No.
It was an absolute privilege and honour for you to step into that world.
It was. And it was, the wonderful thing about it was whilst, we have our profile is always growing here in Australia. In New Zealand, it's, at another level. It's, the level of AFL players and NRL players. And so they had not just the games that we televised, but then they had a weekly show that we were involved with. So we had a tight-knit group of players with Anna and Tanya Dalton and Bernice Meni and a few others, where we would travel the country, do the commentary, which, as you would agree, is not like work. It's like going out and talking netball with your friends.
Yep.
But we just had such a terrific time, and our memories of New Zealand are fabulous, and that was a big part of it. So they're very lucky over in New Zealand in terms of the profile that they have, and I sort of relate it a bit to like living in Adelaide. We're a small community there, so the profile of their netballers was quite high, and we got a lot of press coverage. So it wasn't too dissimilar to what I was used to, but it was just so nice to see netball on TV on a regular basis, and weekly netball shows and so forth, which, we hope becomes a norm over here in Australia.
Did you ever contemplate coaching?
No, not really. I guess you think about it for 5 seconds, but I would have been, and you've been in that industry, I just didn't want to, I knew that if I went down that path, I'd think about it all the time. I'd be obsessed. I would never have done enough. I would never have been satisfied. And I think that probably would have been a tumultuous position to be in over a year, the long term of a coaching career. So I'll stick to coaching my daughter's netball because that's probably harder. But yeah, no, it wasn't, really, it wasn't for me for those reasons, really.
And you spent some time on the Netball Australia board and now move into the head of the Players Association, which I have to say, Kath, you're doing an extraordinary job, in particular right at the moment in an extraordinary time.
Yeah.
But the players just speak so highly of you. I mean, I kind of think we're really privileged in our sport that someone like you's moved into that position.
Yeah, I don't think they should feel privileged. I just think, we all play different roles, like you're in commentary. If you love the sport, the opportunities come your way. And when I stepped off the Netball Australia board, there was an opportunity to lead the playing group. And, it was really helpful having been on the board and having an understanding of the organisation to step into that role and to try and work and get things done, as quickly as possible. So, it's a fabulous role. I absolutely love it. I'm really proud of our playing group. They're fabulous players. But I've got to say that, the last couple of weeks, and particularly when, we had to get all the players on the phone and talk to them about taking 70% pay cut, I really felt it emotionally. A lot of us don't mind working long hours each week and we can cope with that. But when it becomes really emotional and reality hits for a lot of those players, because I don't think until you're told, just how difficult going forward is going to be for a sport like netball, you really got a sense that some of them were confronted with, this is actually serious. So, it was really difficult times a couple of weeks ago, but, with the government support and JobKeeper coming into play, it's sort of given us, a little bit more positivity around the place in terms of the hit that the players need to take going forward. But, it's tough for everyone. It's tough for our sport at the national level, for clubs, member organisations, sports across the country, but businesses as well. So we're no different to anyone else, but, it's taxing for so many of us in so many different ways.
Mate, I know you don't have a crystal ball. We all wish we did at the moment, but you are privy to certain conversations. What do you think the chances are of Suncorp Super Netball getting back before the year end?
Yeah, if you asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said no chance. But now I'm thinking we could potentially get a couple, the season in some shape or form. I think one of a few things going for us, but particularly the amount of games we need to play, even if we got half a season out, 7 games plus finals, which is very different to the other professional male codes where, to get around through, they've got to play 18, 19 games or so. So, full season for us is 14 games plus finals. So, fingers crossed. And I say this to the players all the time is you can never answer any of the questions in an environment like this. You can give advice based on what you know, but you can never actually give an answer, which is really frustrating. So, looking into my crystal ball, I'd like to think we can get, Suncorp Super Netball rolled out in its entirety this year, later on in the year.
Yeah, let's hope so. You watch the league, the players. If you could play, and I've said this to a couple of players, if you were playing in the modern era right now, who'd you love to line up with in the defence circle?
Ash Brazel comes to mind. She's not in the circle. She's on the edge, but I love her flair and athleticism. Within the circle, there's so many good ones. I don't know. Should I go for, Diva Mentor in her prime?
Yeah.
She's English.
Oh yeah, you two would have been a nightmare in the circle.
I would have liked playing with her because she could have run out and done her thing on the sideline, and I know I would have had her back in the circle. So yeah, I'll say Diva.
Yeah.
She's been amazing. Is a really good example of why we allow imports to come in and play our game, because she's exciting to watch. Although actually now another player has come to mind in terms of flair, and you probably know who I'm going to say.
Shamira Sterling.
Shamira.
Yeah.
Shamira, I love Shamira. Yep, she's fab. She's slight, but just has a go, backs herself, reads the game, has some personality about her.
Yeah.
And she's a Thunderbird, so there you go. Probably should have said her from the very beginning.
The get-go. I was just going to ask you that. I mean, you're a proud Thunderbird, and you probably have struggled over the last few years to watch things unfold the way they have. But at the moment, Tanya Ops, a good South Australian girl, in there leading the way. Nat Von Berto back in the system.
Yep.
Are you feeling a bit more inspired?
Yes, it's been tough for Thunderbirds, and particularly, I talked about the culture of the Diamonds. It was the same at the Thunderbirds. We expected to win, and if we didn't win, we were devastated. And that's sort of the mindset that had been part of the South Australian culture for a long period of time. So for then, for those of us who'd been there, part of it for a long period of time, to see, and I thought they lost their identity. There's a lot of talent in South Australia, and it just seemed like those players were being overlooked. And if you look at the competition now, there are South Australians playing a lot of other teams. And if they were part of the Thunderbirds setup, the Thunderbirds would be a highly competitive outfit. So I must say that it was a really frustrating period for us to watch them not only have our homegrown players, but to not be successful. So we were more than happy when we heard that Tanya was taking the reins. She's doing it tough at the moment now because she's got internationals in her team that have gone home. So she's very unsure about what the future looks like this season for the Thunderbirds. But she's a South Australian, and I know she tried really hard to get South Australians back into the system, but, for one reason or another, hadn't been able to do that in her first year. But I know that's behind her agenda. And like you said, Sluter, they've been successful at under 17 and under 19 level in recent times. So they've really got to capitalise on that, because when you grow up in SA, you just want to be a Thunderbird. You revere all those players, you admire them, you want to be one of them one day. So if someone gives you that opportunity, you're going to step in and take it. And that opportunity hasn't been there, over the past few years, but hopefully that will come.
Yeah, absolutely. Harbs, I'm not sure how many of these episodes you've watched right through to the end, but unfortunately I can't let you leave without us having a bit of a discussion around your favourite karaoke song. So I've got a feeling some of those pubs in Adelaide have seen you up on a stage with a microphone at this godly hour.
Look, I wish I'd been watching. I've got none coming to mind, but if you'd say me a couple of tunes.
Well,
Neil Diamond.
Sweet
Caroline. Whoa. I don't even know the words. See, I'm one of those that sings and doesn't know the words and makes them up myself.
But do you know what? I reckon nearly everyone that's done karaoke on Gordys Gasbags has stuffed the words up. Sweet Caroline, good times never felt so good. That's what you got to do.
Yeah,
so
that's it.
I'm going to set you up to sing and say goodbye. Harbs, a big one from you. It's karaoke, Neil Diamond, Sweet Caroline.
Sweet Caroline, whoa, oh, those good times never felt so good.
I don't know what it is about South Australians, but you can't sing.
But it doesn't stop us getting up on stage.
No, and that's the most important thing. Oh, Harbs. Hey, listen, all the very best to you down at Sorrento, and good luck in what I know is the most exhausting and challenging time for you and the players at the moment, and our sport to see and hopefully get this league back up and running based on the government's guidelines. Once that green button goes, we are all raring to go.
Yes, the players will be very keen. As I said, we should all be proud of them because they're handling this really well. So, fingers crossed, you will see them out on court soon.
Champion, folks, a big round of applause. Kathryn Harby-Williams. Thanks, Harbs. Look after yourself, champ.
Lovely chatting.